Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another explainer. So, if you're a true fan of hip-hop culture, you've probably felt that frustration, right? You're scrolling through your feed, and it feels like you're just being force-fed the exact same 10 artists by algorithms and these massive corporate platforms. It kind of feels like the actual real pulse of the streets is just being completely filtered out by invisible gatekeepers. Well, today we're looking at a much-needed cultural corrective. We're diving into the independent vision behind Family Views TV, or as you probably know it, FTV.
Okay, let's dive into this. Real rap, real news. Artists and stories the bigger outlets keep missing. That right there is the core ethos of FVTV, blasted front and center. As an independent Black-owned rap media platform, their whole identity is literally built on catching whatever slips through the cracks of the mainstream machine. They aren't trying to play the same game as the giant corporate outlets. They're actively building a whole new lane dedicated to real news and the stories those industry heavyweights intentionally ignore.
Think of this as our very own channel guide for today's explainer. We're going to unpack this independent empire in 5 parts. First, the mainstream media void. Second, real news no filter. Then, spotlighting the underground, building an independent ecosystem. And finally, the business of independence.
Part 1. The mainstream media void. How exactly do bigger platforms filter out the authentic pulse of the streets?
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Traditionally, the industry standard relies so heavily on pay-to-play models, hidden payola, and just a tiny handful of gatekeepers deciding who actually gets to be famous. But FVTV's independent vision, it completely flips that script. It is beautifully simple. 1 city, 10 signals, no payola. They take a hard, strict stance against the pay-to-play system that completely plagues traditional radio and media. So the artists getting featured are there for their talent and cultural impact, not their budget.
Section 2. Real news no filter. Let's look at what this unfiltered reporting actually looks like on the ground. FTV breaks its coverage down into 3 distinct areas. First up, breaking rap news. But look, it's not clickbait. It's all about providing super fast context when a story is moving rapidly. Second, they focus on underground artists, really prioritizing those crucial regional voices that always get overlooked by the big coastal media hubs. And third, culture with a point of view. This means original reporting that actually says something, instead of just, regurgitating a label's press release. Just take a look at a typical Culture Report lineup to see how deep they go. They aren't just skimming the surface here. We're talking real, concrete source document and paperwork breakdowns, like analyzing a leaked Sauce Walker call right at the 6-minute mark. They're doing in-depth Lotto album reviews and meticulously decoding a Jay-Z freestyle, all of which feeds directly into the massive 2026 Album of the Year conversation. They treat hip-hop with the journalistic rigor it absolutely deserves. Section 3. Spotlighting the underground. This is where they actively champion the regional voices that the mainstream completely ignores. So FVTV takes direct action by doing a pulse check every single Monday with their top 10 cities dropped. Today, for example, July 20th, 2026, marks the drop for Houston's underground scene. By rotating cities every single week, they are actively championing regional voices. They ensure that scenes bubbling just under the surface in places outside of New York, Atlanta, or LA get the high-quality exposure they actually need to break through. Now, what's really interesting about this approach is how they zoom in from the city level right down to the individual. Their Underground Artist of the Week, or UAOTW, spotlights specific indie talent. Take Artist Signal 001, for example, KROSE, coming straight out of Tulsa. FVTV highlights that his hip-hop, soul, and R&B sound is built heavily around themes of healing, heartbreak, and survival. Spotlighting an artist from Tulsa, that shows a real, serious commitment to looking absolutely everywhere for talent. Section 4. Building an independent ecosystem. How exactly does FTVT scale this vision across different media formats? Let's move ahead and see how this builds, because scaling an independent vision requires an entire self-sustaining world. Looking at their release schedule, they're expanding across entirely different formats. You've got digital list, like the Houston Top 10 dropping on July 20th. Then, literally just 5 days later on July 25th, they drop issue 003 of their print and digital magazine. And looking ahead to September 28th, they launched the beta for their very own dedicated mobile app. And the proof that this independent approach can actually scale? Just look at their highly engaged audience. With over 11,000 dedicated followers on Facebook alone, it proves, without a doubt, that there is a massive hunger out there for unfiltered, non-algorithmic hip-hop media. Let's look a little closer at issue 003 of their magazine, titled From Marcy to Empire.
You can really see the deep, original reporting themes they tackle head-on here. They're dedicating actual print space to analyzing ownership and influence in rap. They're demanding industry accountability. They are wrestling with really complex cultural debates, like art versus the artist, and doing deep dives into rap history. This is high-level cultural criticism, packaged completely independently.
So, FVTV's tagline is where the culture lives. But honestly, this isn't just some catchy marketing slogan. In practice, it defines an actionable ecosystem. It is a literal space focused on true ownership, journalistic accountability, and unfiltered regional voices. It's exactly the kind of house that so many hip-hop fans have been practically begging for.
Section 5, the business of independence. Because how does a media company actually survive without corporate backing or payola?
Well, the answer to survival is absolute transparency. They offer very clear, public starting prices for artists who want to utilize their platform's reach. There's the spotlight for $25, you get a dedicated artist interview for $75, or a full push for $100. They also offer magazine ads ranging from $25 to $75. This straightforward business model keeps the lights on, it pays the writers, and it maintains their journalistic integrity because every single transaction is completely above board.
So, the crucial point here is that $25 tier. That incredibly accessible starting price completely democratizes media access. It literally means an independent artist in Tulsa, or Houston, or anywhere else doesn't need some massive bloated label budget to get seen and heard by a dedicated hip-hop audience of over 11,000 people. It's a real game changer.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. As algorithm-driven media continues to filter the narrative, consolidate power, and just feed us the same repetitive loops, we really have to ask ourselves, who is truly holding the mic for the culture? Platforms like FVTV remind us that independence isn't just a buzzword, it's a necessary lifeline for the survival of authentic art and real news. I hope this deep dive gave you a clear picture of how independent media is fighting back. Keep learning, stay curious, and hey, always question the algorithm.